Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knights of the Pageless Library. I am Bo Knight, and with me, as always, is my brother, Ryan Knight. And today we are going to talk about the conception of horror, tales inspired by M.R. James, which is Audible.
Conception of terror.
Conception of terror. When I say horror,
Yeah,
same.
what did I say?
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into that, I'm gonna plug our stuff here, so you guys have to listen to it. So we would really appreciate it if you guys could email us at kotpl.pod@gmail.com. Please send me your hate mail, and I'm gonna read it out loud. And we are also available at Twitter at Knights of the Pageless Library, YouTube Knights of the Pageless Library, and Facebook at Knights of the Pageless Library. So this book is a dramatization, so it's not necessarily an audiobook. I almost consider them two separate things. I don't know about you, Ryan, but to me they are two very different experiences.
I think so too. They both have their pluses and minuses, I suppose. But yeah, this is definitely a dramatization for sure.
Right. So there are multiple people talking, so basically the way I would describe it, it's like a TV show if you couldn't watch the if you didn't get to see the TV.
Yeah, it's yeah. If you're just kind of listening to it in the background without actually seeing what's happening, that's kind of what they're going for there.
And there are so who's the author? Oh, so these are adaptations of another guy's writings. I kind of get the feeling, right? There's another guy who kind of wrote these short stories, and then they made them dramatizations.
Yeah, and each story is also written by like a different person. So
Right, yeah, they're all adapted by different people.
yeah, it's like a big collaboration book smashed into one thing. And this is volume one, we should mention, by the way. There's multiple volumes of this, The Conception of Terror.
Right, and I think Audible is like releasing them monthly. And I
Sure.
actually lied to you earlier. There is four stories, and so I'm just gonna name them all off. So the first one is The Truth of Alchemy. The second one is Lost Hearts. The third one is The Treasure of Albert Thomas, and the fourth one is A View from a Hill. So those are the. So this is four as a collection of four short stories, and
Yeah, and
there's is
they're each what, about an hour long. The overall
yeah,
book is about 4.5 hours
yeah. The
almost.
last one is a little bit longer,
Right.
but yeah, and they're all narrated by about the same people, and it's very British.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. These are all British voice actors, as well as like four of the people that read this are like famous British actors. So
Right.
that's kind of cool.
And if you couldn't tell from the title, The Conception of Terror, it is a like a horror story. They're all horror stories.
Right. These are all, yeah, it's four like short horror stories.
And as always, it's an Audible original, so that's where we listen to it. And if you have Audible, this could be one of the two that you pick from each month. And actually, me and Ryan are talking about that we would like to give all of our listeners the list of books that are Audible is releasing the next month, and then you guys can pick the two that we will do the following month.
Right. Yeah. So we'll try to put up like a poll on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and so we'll put a list of all the books that are going to be available for September, and then you guys can vote on which two we should cover in
Yeah,
September.
and we'll pick the two that get the most votes.
Yep. I
Yeah,
think that's a good
so
idea because um, this might run a little long just because I want to talk about some of this stuff, but I
no,
think
that's okay.
putting it out to a poll is actually a really good idea because we have a huge kind of backlog of stories we're going to be going through. But for the most part, we kind of have a very, I don't know, niche genre we're going to be covering. I notice, we tend to stick to things that we like, and that's not very fair to everybody.
We
So it
only
would
listen to things we've already listened to.
exactly. So I think it would be good to get everybody's opinion on, should I buy this? Should I buy that? Whatever. Is this worth a listen? And um, getting your guys' input would be extremely helpful. Um, I also want to just real quick I stumbled across this YouTube channel, and the girl's name is Murphy Napier. I'm probably saying that wrong. Napier. If anybody is listening or is interested in like real book reviews, definitely go watch her channel because she does a really good job of real book reviews, and I think her spectrum of books that she covers is far more broad than ours. So,
I mean,
just
to be fair, we're both pretty much scrubs when it comes to this kind of stuff still. So, I mean, we're definitely in
absolutely.
our infancy.
Sure, and
So,
we're kind of just doing what's comfortable to us right now. But I think as this grows and expands, we'll definitely try to branch out even more for people. So yeah,
okay. Now coming back to this, I I think I'm gonna give my recommendation now. If you like horror, I think this is something you should look into. But if you don't like scary things, I don't really think there's a lot here for you.
I'm going to agree with that, and I'm going to even take it a step further. If you have the time to set the mood for this, to maybe either driving in the dark, sitting in the dark, playing a video game in the dark, whatever it is, and listen to this at the same time, then maybe.
Ye-
However, I, for me, I listened to this while I was driving during the day, and this was not even a necessarily super easy book to follow for me.
Oh,
Um,
really? See, I thought it was pretty easy to follow.
and by not easy to follow, I mean I missed a few chunks just kind of daydreaming, and I was able to gather what was happening again afterwards, but I think they just weren't that interesting.
And
So,
I'm gonna agree with you. I feel like they're really cliche things
yeah,
that like the horror wise, and a couple of them, it's like I didn't really understand why like the monster or whatever force that they are encountering is part of it. Like it didn't really
sure,
seem like it didn't seem like like there were sinister things going on before, but then all of a sudden there's like it's spooky and scary for some reason. Like I didn't
right,
really it didn't really tie in well.
sure, and that's kind of what I mean. The stories just kind of fell flat to me, I guess.
And to
Um,
me, I think the strongest one is the first one.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that too. That I thought it came out of the gate relatively well. I mean, I wasn't like blown away by the story, but I thought it
It
was
it,
pretty
it did
good.
come out of the gate really strong, but then I think it drops off significantly. And but
Sure.
the last one is pretty good, but the middle two are not very good.
Yeah. Um,
And yeah, I
I
don't know
guess
how
with
you
that,
feel, but
I think so. That's kind of our recommendations. I actually don't really recommend this one to be honest, unless you're like really into horror writing stuff. Then by all means, but I, I mean, I would kind of steer clear of this one, even if you can get it for free. I don't think it's worth the
it's
4 hours.
it's really generic and it's not really groundbreaking in any way, and it's not it's like your regular horror movie that you go to the movies to see. I feel like the characters aren't that smart. They're not really like paying attention to the things that are going on around them. I feel like a lot of the time, and they get themselves in stupid situations just because they're being stupid.
Right, and to me, these stories, all four of them, I think, kind of suffered from the same thing. Is they started out okay in terms of like being kind of psychological, to where I was kind of like, oh, and then what? And then what's going to happen? And then it was immediately like, and now let's turn the corner into slasher horror. And I was
Basically,
like,
yeah.
weak, man. Like,
And to me, the slasher horror like aspect of like these monsters does not translate well to audio.
no, absolutely not. It is I think someone reading this personally might have a much different experience than we did, because you're creating this as you go, as you're reading, and you're creating the environment. But the even with the dramatization of this, it did not come across strong as like a horror story to me.
No, and like a lot of the things that they're running into are like presences, right? So it's like they don't really even describe like how they're feeling. Like and I don't know, it didn't really like land for me, a lot of them.
No,
Like
and so I think um, I mean, we've kind of already started talking about each story, but so the first one was, we'll just go ahead and say spoiler alert. We're going to talk about the 4 of these real quick because I want to break them down one by one real quick.
Okay.
So you have our kind of both not really recommended, but so here we go.
We said, it's okay.
Yeah, basically. So the first one is the one with that gal, right? She runs into that dude and he's like stalking her. Oh, she reviews his paper, and
Right,
then
yeah.
he's like starts stalking her, and she finds out that he like can actually do like magic and like curses her, right?
Right. He gives her a book, and in the book, he like basically he puts like a summons for a demon to kill her.
Okay, that's right.
But she like kind of understands it, right? And she burns the paper, which was where you're not supposed to do. We find out, blah blah blah. She dies, and then her husband like goes after this other guy, and he
So
he like
wait
tricks
though.
him.
We got to talk about how she dies. So she's given
Oh,
like
right, right,
three.
right.
She's given like 3 days to live, kind of like the ring type story. So she thinks that like around every corner, something's trying to kill her, which is weird in itself. And then all of a sudden, she's like, "We have to leave. It's the 3rd day. We have to get out of town." So her and her husband like jump in the car and like drive out to the middle of the woods. And then they get attacked by like this entity. And
Which they don't really describe it.
yeah, because oh, that's right. They hit something in the car, and her husband thinks it was a deer, so he gets out, or a dog or something. And then she drives off, right? Because she sees this entity, and it's gonna attack her, and then she ends up like wrecking the car and dying. And
No, the entity kills her, but her husband makes it seem like she had a car crash.
Okay.
Because he couldn't figure out how to explain it to somebody else.
Right. But I just was like, I'm like listening to that, and I was like, okay, it was kind of interesting. And then that part though, the part where she died, I was like, okay, that was pretty lame.
Oh, it was super lame.
Because
super lame.
I mean, not I don't know anything about writing, but I felt like they had a great scene set. They're out in the woods in the dark in their car. You could draw this like kind of freaky scene out, like, and they didn't. It was just like, and now we're in the middle of the woods, and now I see this thing, and now I'm dead.
Yeah, that was basically it.
Yeah, I was like, what happened?
Yeah, and I mean, and then some other stuff happens, but nothing else really interesting happens. I mean, it's just like mind games between the husband and this other guy.
It was fucking stupid though.
It was stupid. You're right. It was pretty stupid.
I mean,
I think the next one is worse.
Okay, so yeah, that's the Treasure of Abbot Thomas. So we were just talking.
The next one is Lost Hearts.
Okay, yeah, and which one was that?
This is the one when the girl, she's in the foster home and she gets taken into this really fancy like house place, and the place is like opulent, but then they notice there's like
an apartment
weird
building. Like
right, yeah, but it's like an apartment building.
Yeah.
And they notice there's no kids, and she like starts seeing this weird entity that was like, to me this one is super weak because she like sees this entity. But then, okay, sinister stuff happens, and they're like, so basically, it's like they have to sacrifice these children to keep up their lifestyle. To understand it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't really understand
but that's like,
either.
that's it. That's like all they explain. But then they like don't really bring up why these other children are still there, and then the children like attack like they stop the people from killing the main story, like what it's about, the girl. But then, so you're like, oh, she's safe. And then the cops just bring her right back to the same place.
Well, and her social worker brings her back with the cop. Yeah, so her social worker's like in on it.
Yeah, it was like, I thought that one was so dumb. And
it was pretty weak. I didn't really like that at all.
The next one is the one that you were talking about, the Treasure of Abbot Thomas, which I think was also pretty weak.
It was terrible. And what's funny is right before we were going to start this, I started talking about it because when I heard the name of it, when they were like, the next story is The Treasure of Abbot Thomas, I thought, wait a minute, I've heard that before. And I pulled up my list of podcasts, and I have a podcast that I am subscribed to that is called like Ghost Stories of something. of an antiquarian, and it's just the same kind of thing. So it's a podcast of like a collection of horror stories, and the Treasure of Abbot Thomas is in there.
Oh, seriously?
And I had started listening to it, and I was like, "This is awful," and I quit listening to it like 15 or 20 minutes in for the same reason that I didn't like it in this one. I'm like, it's not written very well, and
Oh
I
no,
don't know if
it's written so poorly, and like where the monster comes from makes no sense.
makes
So
no sense.
so I'll give you the overview. So this man, when he was younger, he had a teacher who was a pedophile, and he like had these kids go on treasure hunts, and whoever won the treasure hunt, he would like molest them, is what I understand.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of what I got to.
the kid kept getting out of the treasure hunt on purpose. But like now that then Albert Thomas dies, and this man starts remembering more and more about him, and so and then him and this other lady that start working at the school, who actually took over Albert Thomas's job, they like go on this treasure hunt to find his treasure. But I don't really understand, like the supernatural element of it makes no sense to me. Like I don't understand why there is like a weird, strange monster around this treasure of Albert Thomas. It makes no sense. Like it
No,
doesn't. I don't know where it came from.
I don't either, and I don't understand. I didn't even really like the description part of it is so weak that at one point I was like, I don't even understand where they are. I was like, I think they're in the school somewhere, but I don't get it. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know. I did not like it at all.
that one is just it's weird. It makes no sense, and I don't understand. Like I don't know. It's weird. I don't really get it. Like that one
No,
is, I think, the weakest out of them all.
I think so too. For the sole purpose that it's also the most confusing as far as like the way it's written and the way it's told is like
Well,
if you miss one little
yeah,
part, you're going to be lost. You're going to have no idea what they're talking about.
and part of it too, to me, that I was kind of confusing was like the two, like the girl and her girlfriend. Their voices sound almost the exact same. And so when they were
Yes,
talking, it was like I don't know who is talking, if it's the teacher lady or her girlfriend. Like I couldn't really tell.
right. And that's a thing too with dramatization is they rely on that of it's different people talking, so there
Well,
is no
yeah, it's
he
not like
said
and
she
then
said.
Craig said. It doesn't do that. It's just they
No.
just keep talking.
They just have a normal conversation and you just are a bystander. So yeah, it can be very difficult if multiple people's voices sound similar to distinguish who is talking now, which can
And
be important to the story.
the only other dramatization we've done was Alien, and I think that one does a much better job of everybody having a unique voice.
Yeah, and there's like 20 some actors in
Yeah.
that. So that says a lot that they picked very good people with very distinct voices to play each role. I mean, there was a couple that I was like, wait a minute, who is that again? Because
Right.
it's also hard to remember whose voice belongs to who when they
Yeah,
don't
that is hard.
introduce
You're
the
right.
character each time.
And so the last story, A View from a Hill, I think might have been the best one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that I think this one okay, so this one was kind of the same as the first one for me, though. I thought it opened well, and I thought it had some great elements to it.
Oh yeah, and then it just
And it
jumps in the
actually,
dumpster.
oh yeah, bingo! Like, yeah, you nailed that one.
So
Because
yeah, go ahead.
now, go ahead. You can explain it how it starts.
So yeah, like this couple is they're they're like going on a retreat because their son had died, and they're like going to forget about him. And one of the guys has a podcast about like
Husband.
grieving the husband. Yeah, the husband. You're right. Yeah, he has like a podcast about their son, and I didn't really understand why the wife didn't like the podcast. It didn't really make any sense to me.
And why she didn't help. I mean,
Yeah,
why she
super weird.
wasn't part of it. Because so this one for me, why it kind of was strong for me in the beginning is because it kind of tugged at my heartstrings a little bit because they lost their young child. Like he was only like what 3 or 4 or something, very young.
Yeah, no, he was
And
7.
or that's yeah, bingo, you're right, 7. Uh, it still was very like she tells some patrons there at the hotel what happened, and she like it was it kind of hit home for me because like having little kids, that I've been not in obviously that situation, but where like you're doing something and you all of a sudden you lose track of your kids, and you're like, I better go find the kids. Well, she loses track of her 7-year-old. She didn't know he hops on his bike and he rides down the road and he gets hit by a car and it kills him. So right away I was like, whoa, they're opening up emotionally strong, which I liked. I was like, okay, now what? What's happening next? And it's just kind of downhill from there, to be honest.
The supernatural element in this one again is like,
Why?
okay, but why? Yeah,
exactly. Why is it even there? That I did not like that at all.
But in like the people it ends up affecting, it makes no sense to me. Like it doesn't. I don't get it.
Right. No, and it's the thing I think happened was they had like two different stories, and they just like smashed them together when they didn't really need to be smashed together. Because so what happens? They go out in the woods. They're walking through the woods as part of their retreat, and they see this like.
It's an abbey.
That's right, an abbey. So kind of like a castle-y church-looking thing up on this hill, and the gal says, "Let's go check that place out." And so they start to walk up towards it. It's like a ways away from where they were, and they had to walk. It's kind of how I understood it is they had to walk kind of back into the woods and go out and around to get up to this abbey. And then when they get where they thought they saw it, there's nothing there but like ruins.
Right.
So that part I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's a cool twist. What is this building? But then the gal, because the husband's off like talking into an audio recorder to record his podcast because she doesn't want anything to do with it. But it's like his coping mechanism for his son dying. And and then all of a sudden she starts like hearing weird noises as if something's like stalking her in these ruins.
Which doesn't freak her out very much, though.
No, not at all.
And so he's recording his podcast, right? And then she hears, which I listened to it like 5 times and I could not hear it. I don't know if I'm crazy, but she hears her son say "mommy," and so she wants to go back, but she only hears it once, and then she like listens to it again and it's not there.
Right, and so the reason that's weird is because he was recording at those ruins, and so she's like, oh, our son is at those ruins and he's trying to communicate with us.
And her husband doesn't have any of it. And so they end up like, she ends up in the hospital.
Oh yeah, because the thing like, she goes back and then she ends up like falling and knocking herself out somehow.
Right.
Because she calls her husband while she's there.
Right.
And all the townspeople in this little tiny town were like, oh, there is no abbey up there, or burn down, or don't go there. And it was very like cliche, like I guess. And then he ends up getting wasted, drunk, because she's at the hospital, right, that night. He gets drunk, and then something scares him, right, in his bathroom or something.
Yeah, and then he wants to leave.
That's right.
And then he gets kidnapped?
I guess?
By something? and then they find him like hung, right? Like he's hung from the tree in the woods.
Yeah, and something like killed him. That's right, the townspeople are like the people who own the hotel, like go with her to look for him. And they find him like that. And I was just like, huh?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What?
Huh?
And then they proceed to explain that like the abbey, they were like killing children there too or something. Like,
well, because the townspeople like hid these monks from the government, and then the monks moved on, but the government found out and they killed all the people's children.
Oh, that's right. That's what they took all the townspeople's children and killed them there at that abbey, and then like burned it down or something.
And
I was like,
fail to understand why that would mean there's a monster who wants to kidnap this guy
and kill him. Exactly. And I was like, what does he have to do? Like, if they were gonna go with that story, it's like, okay, why don't you just have this haunting that's at this abbey start bleeding over into the town? Like I'm fine with it haunting him at the hotel. Like maybe the townsfolk are kind of immune to it because they live there and they know it's nothing. And so like if him and his wife are seeing things because they're outsiders, good. You got a good hook there. But this was just like, what? Why?
Yeah, exactly. What? So yeah, actually, now that we talk about it more, I'm gonna not recommend this. Actually,
Yeah, I told you I did not like it.
we came into this and I was like, oh, it's pretty good. But like now that we like break it down, it's like it's actually terrible.
It's I just don't think it was, like I told you, I listened to it at like 1.25 speed. I just wanted to get through it so I could say I listened to the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't really think I got much more else to say about it.
I really don't, and I know this was supposed to be a turbo episode, but I had to get some harsh feelings off my chest on this
That's
one.
okay.
So,
So yeah, we almost doubled the time, but I do we have anything else we need to say?
I got nothing else for this one. Yeah, maybe at some point we'll do the volume 2 if somebody else wants us to. But if it's anything like volume 1, I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah, I agree. And I see, and the thing is, I like horror, and this is just horror not done well.
Right, and I mean, like I said, I know nothing about writing. I'm not going to even pretend like I do. But I feel like as a consumer, I can have an opinion about what I think is good and what I think is bad. And I just don't think that this was horror done well. For anyone who wants to hear a good short horror story, go back and listen to our episode about Lullaby and go listen.
Yeah, Lullaby is good.
Yeah, because Lullaby is a good short, actually scary story. Like,
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, Ryan, what are we doing next time?
so our next episode is going to be Area X Annihilation.
Yeah, so it's the first book in a series.
Right, and that will be our next full-length episode. And then for our next Turbo episode, we're going to do Treasure Island.
Right, but that's the Audible original, correct?
It is also an Audible original, and it's actually pretty long. It's like 6.5 hours long. So we might try to do a short episode to just give our our recommendations and stuff on it, and then maybe we'll revisit it to do a full talkthrough about it.
Yeah. Okay then. I think I'm pretty good. So
Yep.
this freaking, what is it called? Can't even remember the name of it. It's so generic.
The Conception of Terror.
The Conception of Terror is not good.
Bingo. So yeah, and with that said, I hope to catch you guys in the next one.
All right, bye everybody.